Esther, do you think you want to come back here and get moving? Okay, well, we're just going to first, why don't we start? If you look at your list, you'll see 3 withdrawals. And the pages 2 and 3, Senate Bill 505 is withdrawn from Senator Zucker, Senate Bill 638 from Senator McKay, and Senate Bill 8678 from Senator Hershey. So I will entertain an unfavorable motion withdrawn from somebody. Okay, Senator Kagan moves unfavorable on those 3 pieces of legislation. Second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of the withdrawals, raise your hand. All opposed. Those 3 bills are unfavorable, withdrawn. Let's just start up at the list, and there's a couple bills here that might require some more conversation, so I may come back to them. But let's start with 168. I think we have an agreement between Senator Simon Ayer and the Port of Baltimore after many back and forth. So, April, why don't you refresh everybody's memory about Senate Bill 168?
All right, Senate Bill 168, Environmental Justice and Confined Aquatic Disposal Act. This bill prohibits the Maryland Department of the Environment from processing or making any recommendation to the Board of Public Works regarding an application for the alteration of any tidal wetlands or waters of the state submitted for the purpose of constructing a confined aquatic disposal cell within 5 miles of a residential overburdened community. There are amendments in your bill packet. Amendment 263721/1 from Senator Simon Ayer. The amendments strike the restrictions on construction within a certain distance of overburdened communities and substitute a 4-year statewide moratorium on the construction of confined aquatic disposal cells anywhere in the state. The amendment also alters the definition of confined aquatic disposal and adds a sunset provision terminating the bill after 4 years.
Okay, Senator Simon Ayer, we got a letter, I think, from the port director. Could you just tell the committee about that?
Yeah, so I think April explained it well. So we've come up with agreement. We got a letter from the port that said they won't construct a CAD for 4 years. So this is codifying it. It'll sunset after 4 years. And then at that point, we'll see where the work group comes back with their recommendations and so forth, and we'll discuss it at that point. So they've shared that with the House chair as well as you, I believe. So it's not 100% what either side wanted, but it's a compromise we both agreed on.
Okay, does anybody want to move that compromise amendment? Senator Simon Ayer moves that compromise amendment. Is there a second? Second. Second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, we got 168 as amended. In front of us, Senator Simon Ayer, would you like to move favorable on the bill as amended? You do. Second from Senator Augustine, Senate Bill 168 as amended. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries. Let's hold 234 for a second. When we come back to it, that's going to require, I think, a little more discussion. Let's go down to Senate Bill 249 next. We'll come back to 234.
Senate Bill 249, Pesticide and Pest Control, Revisions to Pesticide Applicators Law and Repeal of Obsolete Provisions. This departmental bill from the Department of Agriculture eliminates the ability for a non-certified individual to do a commercial application of a restricted use pesticide under the supervision of a certified pest control applicator or certified public agency applicator, and establishes additional requirements that must be met in order for a non-certified individual to do a private application of a restricted use pesticide under the supervision of a certified private applicator. Bill also repeals provisions governing cyclodiene termaticides and anti-fouling paint containing a tributyltin compound. Which those are now obsolete. Just as a reminder, this is the one that the Department of Agriculture said is necessary to bring them in line with their current sort of structure under what EPA has authorized, that have sort of clamped down the restrictions a little bit on how these pesticides can be applied.
A question from Senator Augustine.
There was this letter from Baltimore City. Can you just help us to understand like why that's not an issue?
So I circled back with the Department of Agriculture. They reached out to Baltimore City, talked with them, talked through their concerns, and it actually, Baltimore City, according to the Department of Agriculture, says their concerns have been addressed and that it does not actually affect their rat program.
Okay, move favorable.
Okay, we have a favorable on, yes, Senator Carozza.
Thank you. I was just looking at my bill file, going back, though, I guess when we first heard it at the end of January, and there was, I thought, some back and forth with the Maryland Farm Bureau. Where did they end up on the bill? Do we know?
The Maryland Farm Bureau didn't testify. The Turf Grouse Council came in favorable, but I don't have any testimony from the Farm Bureau.
We're on Senate Bill 249. You got, yeah, there's no unfavorable from the Farm Bureau on the bill. Senator Carozza.
I understand. I just, I was trying to understand how this bill, and I realize the department needs it, I guess, to be in compliance at the federal level, if I understand it. But I was just trying to better understand how it affects individuals. I mean, is there something new that, in the interest of no surprises, an application that would cause, I guess, dramatic changes in the way they're currently operating? That's what I was just trying to understand on it.
Senator Gallion, maybe you could answer again there.
The way I read it, this is regarding restricted use pesticides and in commercial applications. So you'd probably want a certified person. So I think that's probably pretty standard practice already. And then someone that's not certified would kind of fall under them, it looks like, according to the fiscal note. Is that correct, April? If you're not certified, you can work under the direction of someone that's certified?
Yeah, and part of what the bill does is it specifies that it has to be a direct supervision, so they're actually, they have to actually be there.
So a non-certified person would just be underneath the direct supervision of someone who is certified to use these type of pesticides, correct?
If it's a private application.
Okay.
So a
Well,
private, I
if
believe
the
a
only
farm would be
farm
considered-
senator on the committee is okay with it, then I'm okay with it. Thank you.
The Farmers Bureau did not oppose the bill. I don't know, but okay. We have a favorable from Senator Augustine, a second from Senator Gallion. Okay, we've got Senate Bill 249 clean. There's no amendment. There's no amendments, right?
There's no
No amendments. All in favor, Senate Bill 249 clean, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries. Let's go, 250 is another one's going to take a little discussion. Let's go to Senate Bill 253. I think we have some amendments that I will characterize as somewhat compromised. April, why don't you describe Senate Bill 253? Refresh everybody's memory.
Senate Bill 253, Controlled Hazardous Substance Facility Permit, Research Facilities, Chemical Warfare Material Requirements. Senate Bill 253 is a departmental bill from the Department of Commerce. The bill exempts the incineration of chemical warfare materials at a Department of Defense designated research facility from certain special permitting requirements if the incineration is done for research, development, or demonstration permits. There are amendments in your packet. Amendment number 683127/1. They are on page 27, beginning on page 27 of the voting packet. These are by request of the Department of Commerce, and were sort of worked out with some of the stakeholders on this bill, including the Department of the Environment and some of the opposition. The amendments clarify that activities covered by the bill would need to be permitted under a controlled hazardous substances research, development, and demonstration permit issued by the Maryland Department of the Environment. Further, the amendments establish air monitoring requirements, special considerations, and reporting requirements applicable to activities covered under the bill that would apply above and beyond what is currently required for research, development, and demonstration permits.
And we have somebody from the Commerce Department here, if anybody wants ask any questions. Senator Gallion, yeah.
So the air monitoring was not in the original bill, that's in the amendment of that area? Okay, that's important. I mean, we're talking about potentially like Edgewood part of Aberdeen Proving Ground with this, right?
Right. This is,
So it's close to
if you recall,
population center.
correct. I mean,
Hartford
we had
County.
the Department of Defense in here, for the bill, and Aberdeen being I guess, the place in the United States where this can be done. But yeah, so these amendments were in part to try to respond to some of the issues that were, raised at the hearing and beyond. Questions for Department of Commerce or for April? Sure. Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend all the parties for meeting and coming up with thoughtful amendments. I just have a question, April. On page 31, under number 3, the department shall, to the extent that doing so is consistent with section 4-352, blah, 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 and it's about transparency. Could you just translate what that department, what the parameters would be, and when they would be required to post all the information on the website, and for how long?
Right, so this is that section of the general provisions article is part of the Public Information Act that has to do with the disclosure of potentially sensitive security, like national security information. So the idea here would be that, so these reports have to do with the monitoring, et cetera, that's happening under the permit. But the idea would be that they could redact anything that was potentially a national security issue. In terms of how long they would have to post them, this also requires that they be submitted to the library, DLS library. So like any other report, it would be maintained forever, at least here.
That makes good common sense. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, anybody want to move those amendments?
So moved.
Okay, Senator Kagan moves those amendments. A second from Senator Gallion. All in favor of those amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendments carry. We've got 253 as amended before us. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Favorable from the Vice Chair, second from Senator Simon Ayer. Discussion, questions? All in favor of Senate Bill 253 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Senate Bill 254. Devin?
Senate Bill 254, State Government, excuse me, Department of Veterans and Military Families, Board and Commission, Membership and Oversight. This departmental bill from the Department of Veterans and Military Families repeals the War Memorial Commission and instead requires the Department of Veterans and Military Families to provide oversight of the War Memorial Building. As introduced, the bill alters the membership of the Board of Trustees of the Maryland Veterans Trust and the Maryland Veterans Commission and specifies that a majority of the voting members on the trust, of the trust and commission are a quorum. There is an amendment from Senator Brooks on page 38 of your packet, and that exact same amendment is offered by Senator Simon Ayer as well and is on your desk. The amendment would strike the provisions of the bill relating to the membership of the Veterans Trust Fund Board of Trustees. In that amendment, they made the House and Senate members non-voting, and that provision was struck.
Okay, any questions about the combination Simon Ayer-Brooks amendment? Okay, would either one of those two senators, okay, Senator Brooks, would like to move, page 38, move that amendment, and we have a motion from Senator Brooks, sponsor of the amendment. Second, yeah, question from Senator Hester on the amendment or the underlying bill?
The underlying bill.
Okay, can we maybe take the amendment up for a second?
Second the amendment.
From Vice Chair Kagan. So all in favor of the amendment, and then we'll take up the bill. Raise your hand. All opposed. The amendment carries. Now we're on the bill, and Senator Hester has a question.
So this could be an error on my side, but I had a note that said we're waiting for a letter from the Baltimore City delegation. Is that this bill?
Yes, I was going to say. that
Okay, well,
we're- so there's a lot of concern. So
could you clarify a little more?
that the bill transfers operation from a prior agreement to solely to the state, and it dispels the I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for it. It dispels the entity that was created by both Baltimore City and the state to manage the property, to manage it. And there's been no discussion about this, and the Senate delegation would like an opportunity to discuss this. So I apologize that I didn't follow up with you on this, but
Okay, well, it was the city delegation have any plan to
no, I think
discuss
what
it?
what I would offer is an amendment to strike that portion of a bill and let the other portions go through, so, but didn't do that.
Who's the department? Is there somebody from the department? Which Department of, there's nobody from the Department of Veterans Affairs here.
No, this is the War Memorial that was built in 1913 actually it's a federal, because I'm also reaching out, it's a joint project between federal, state, and local. And they are removing congressional representation. There's a lot going on in that bill that is not about just the board, the commissioner, and the oversight. It's substantially changing who manages and controls that building.
Can I just ask
It's
you?
jointly titled, the building is jointly titled by Baltimore City and the state. And so,
Okay, has there been any conversation, since we had the hearing between the city delegation, the
Monday.
department? I'm sorry?
Oh, no. I mean, I've
Okay, here, let's
expressed-
just, well, no, I don't want to press it if we feel, but, I mean, we have a bill in front of us, a departmental bill, and so I'm just trying to come up with a rationale for what.
Well, I mean, what I see is the department attempting to take over an asset without having the conversations it needed to have. If you remember, during the bill hearing, I asked, were there any conversations with the veterans? Were there any conversations with the city delegate, the mayor and the city council? They had no knowledge of this. So it's a really important, significant piece of history and real estate in downtown Baltimore, and simply because no one noticed it for that to be allowed to be transferred to a department is something. And again, I will take responsibility that it wasn't, was on our agenda, but we were working on other things, so
Okay.
it is,
Okay,
it's
look,
there.
let's-
But I will say that
Yeah.
this is not something that the Baltimore City Senators, the portion of it that is turning an asset that is jointly owned by the Baltimore City and the state completely over to the full
Okay,
control of the
let's,
city.
Says the state of Baltimore City jointly shall hold title to the Baltimore Community.
That's been since 1913. But the actual operation, the commission was created to jointly manage this building. And the oversight of the building, setting fees for it, all of it, is with Baltimore City. This bill changes that relationship and also dissolves a commission without any discussion of alternatives. So, and
okay, I don't want to, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too much
No,
longer on
I'm-
the bill, so let's just hold the bill, and then maybe we could get some clarity from
we'll get
the
some
Senate
clarity.
delegation, the Baltimore
Yes.
City Senate delegation, Okay, let's go down to Senate Bill 263.
Senate Bill 263, Heating, Ventilation, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Contractors, License Restoration. This departmental bill extends the time period from 90 days to 4 years during which a licensee of the State Board of Heating, Ventilation, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Contractors may apply for a license restoration after expiration. I spoke with the department, and the department is fine if it is the will of this committee to make that 2 years. The House kept 4 years on their cross-file, which is in the possession of this committee.
You guys remember we had this whole nine months, 4 years. So the House stuck with 4 years, but we could go to 2 years, and the department said. With the 4? Okay, so we can have a discussion, but we do have a motion to go with the 4 years, a second from Senator Augustine. So we have that in front of us. Senator Carrozza, you had okay? Any questions on that? Anybody? Okay. Well, that was an amendment. That's the way the bill was. Okay, so we have in front of us a motion on 263 clean with still the 4 years like the House. Discussion, all in favor of Senate Bill 263 clean, raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Yeah. Okay, we have a dissent from Vice Chair Kagan. Senator Washington, are you voting on this? I'm sorry. Senate Bill 263. Okay, so we have a 10-1 vote, carries the motion with a red vote from Vice Chair Kagan. We're going to move to Senate Bill 277, Senator Simon Ayer, and back to you, Devin.
Senate Bill 277, Health Equality for Service Members Act. This bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military and the general provisions, general health occupations, housing and community development, and state government articles of the Maryland Code, primarily by reference to definitions in the U.S. Code. While numerous alterations within the bill represent only stylistic or technical changes, there are some substantive changes. These changes generally make certain provisions applicable to all members of the uniformed services, thereby expanding eligibility for privileges and benefits like health occupations licensing, fee exemptions for vital records, and so on. EEE is secondary on the bill. Finance amended the bill, and those amendments beginning on page 39 of your packet. They are technical, and they conform the bill to the provisions of Senate Bill 275 that you passed last week.
Okay, so we're the two spot here, and so really what's in front of us, do we want to move favorable on what the Finance Committee has already done, the action they've done? It's favorable from Senator Augustine, second from Senator Sumner. Sure.
Quick question for council. It appears that this, either all or in part, takes the Nurses Association, Board of Nurses amendment, requested amendment. I just want to see, did that? Yeah, please.
Senator Simon Ayer?
Yeah,
So we did put that amendment in there, and what it was.
Did or didn't? Sorry.
We did,
Okay.
and they had sister sections, and they wanted them all to be consistent, so they just made them all consistent.
Okay.
And they're good with it.
So they're happy now? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we've got, again, a favorable motion and
The amendment?
well, we're basically just taking up favorable
Correct.
on what the action of the Finance Committee is. So we had a favorable from Senator Augustine. Was there a second from Vice Chair? All in favor of that action on Senate Bill 277, the favorable motion to adopt, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. We're going to go next to Senate Bill 279. We're also second to Finance, Senator Simon Ayer bills. We're going to, I'm sorry?
I thought we just did the amendments, so we voted on
No, that's why I asked that.
Yeah. 279, Devin?
Senate Bill 279, Employment and Insurance Equality for Service Members Act. This bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military in the business occupations and professions, business regulation, commercial law, economic development, financial institutions, general provisions, insurance, labor and employment, state finance and procurement, and state government articles of the code, primarily by reference to definitions in the U.S. Code. Most are stylistic or technical changes. The substantive changes generally make some provisions more broadly applicable to additional service members, including those related to eligibility for certain benefits. In this case, it's exemption from license renewal fees and eligibility under specified loan programs. EEE is secondary on the bill. Finance amended the bill, and those amendments are on page 42 of your packet. The amendments alter the provisions of the bill to be the same as SB 275 that you passed out of here last week.
Yes, Senator Sumner.
Get all the bills come through here because what we did is we put the state government definitions in each one of those bills with the general provisions. And so all of them will be amended to what we passed out in 275, which had the bill hearing on those. But that's why they're all coming back here.
We're second to finance, and they've taken action. So again, I think like the last bill, I think we've got Senator Augustine moving favorable to adopt what the Finance Committee has done. Senator Kagan is second. All in favor of Senate Bill 279 adopting the action of the Finance Committee? That carries unanimously. Let's next go to Senate Bill 282. April.
Senate Bill 282, Recreational Equality for Service Members Act. This is another one of the bills related to SB 275. The bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military in the general provisions, natural resources, and state government articles of the Maryland Code, primarily by reference to definitions in the U.S. Code. Changes also clarify and or expand the availability of service member and veteran benefits and privileges to certain additional service members and veterans. There is an amendment in your bill packet on page 44, it's amendment number 843425/1 from Senator Simonaire. These amendments conform the definitions used in the bill to Senate Bill 275 as unanimously passed by the Senate. They also explicitly add members of the Maryland National Guard to provisions of the bill authorizing certain active service members to access state park facilities without paying a fee.
Okay, Senator Simonaire, do you want to add anything or move favorable on those amendments? Okay. Favorable from the sponsor of the amendment, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of those Simonaire amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? That carries. We've got Senate Bill 282 as amended before us. Senator Simonaire, you want to move? Moves the bill as amended. Senator Augustine, second. All in favor of Senate Bill 282 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. Next up, Senate Bill 294. Devin?
Senate Bill 294, Maryland Cybersecurity Council membership alterations. This bill requires the governor, instead of the Attorney General, to appoint various members of the Maryland Cybersecurity Council and invite as appropriate representatives from specified federal agencies to serve on the council. Additionally, instead of the Attorney General or the Attorney General's designee serving as the chair of the MCC, beginning in October, and every 2 years thereafter, the council must elect a chair from among the members of the council. Important to note that this is a departmental bill in the House, but the Senate cross-file was approved too late to be made a departmental, hence the chair is the sponsor of the bill.
It's basically a bill from the Attorney General, in effect.
There are also amendments on
right,
page...
Senator Hester has an amendment.
Yes, page 55 of your packet from Senator Hester. These amendments add an amendment that the House put on the bill that adds the executive director of the Cybersecurity Association to the council. The amendments also add several additional members to the council, require either the chair or the vice chair to be a state employee and the other to be a non-state employee, and adds privacy interest and AI threats to the charge of the council.
Senator Hester, do you want to articulate those amendments?
Yes, and I do want to point out that there's somebody from the Attorney General's office here. He approves of the amendment. Just for context, the Attorney General has been like an amazing chair of the council, and we're gonna miss him, but he's gonna stay on, or she in the future. We thought it was important that the members, elect a chair and a vice chair, and Senator Simonaire suggested that it would be good to have one of them be a state employee. So we've made that change. We talked about this at the Cybersecurity Council meeting like 2 weeks ago about whether, since the statute is open, do we want to make some of the changes that we've been thinking about to broaden it slightly from cybersecurity because of the nexus with artificial intelligence and quantum computing, so and privacy. So that is what the group decided it wanted to do. In conversations with actually the Senate President's office, we talked about having the governor appoint like all 30 people or whatever, and we thought that was a little too much. And so we've tried to take each of the entities, like, for example, the CISO from a bank will be appointed by the American Bankers Association. The water CISO will be appointed by the Water Association. So just taking some onus off of the governor's appointments office, and putting it back onto the entities. Most of these people are actually already on the council. We are expanding it slightly, but and we actually deleted a couple people who never show up. So it's kind of a cleanup bill. It's been 15 years since the council has done something like this. At the end, it also requires the council to update its bylaws to reflect the committee structure that will likely change a little bit and more, following this slight expansion of the topic.
With that, Senator Carrozza, then Vice Chair Kagan has a question on the Hester amendments.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. On page 56, underneath where the universities are listed, there's no geographic diversity. It's all Central Maryland, and I know it says 2 additional representatives. I represent Salisbury University and University of Maryland Eastern Shore, but looking at this, it just jumped out at me that it was centrally located, and, I didn't know if the 2 additional, whether that, one of those could come from the shore.
So once again, these are the current universities participating. I would love to have, if there is, a nexus with cyber or AI, either of those universities or both of them, I think that they could be added.
So do we think that the 2 additional representatives would cover that, or whether we add the word geographic diversity to
So
the
once again,
appoint-
I don't know why these 6 are currently there. They participated for the last 15 years. But what we could do is add 7 and 8 for those 2 universities if you would like. I don't.
Well, I don't think we need them both, but I think it should, it jumped out at me that it's all Central Maryland, and I represent 2 University of Maryland system schools, and just looking for that, and I wouldn't want to pick one or the other, just one of them that would make the most sense to be on there.
Senator Carrozza, may I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
Yes, offer a suggestion.
So geographic diversity is totally important, and this is about expertise in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, which isn't just anyone everywhere. So what if number 2 at the bottom of page 56 said 2 additional representatives designated, sort of, and Devin can wordsmith or whatever, with due consideration for geographic
I'm fine with
diversity or
that.
something. So it's not guaranteed.
I'm fine
but
with
we want
that.
to think about that.
I'm fine with that.
Something, I don't know what words that would be.
It just really jumped
Yeah,
out.
I think it's inclusive, and I think that makes sense.
Okay,
Okay.
does everybody get the modification, the Kagan modification to the Hester amendment?
To the Carrozza concern.
To the Carrozza addressing, correct. Okay, everybody got it? Okay.
But I still have questions.
Okay, before we take up the amendment, we're going to have questions. First, Vice Chair Kagan has a separate question.
I do. So Senator Hester, thank you for this amendment. I'm on page 57. And I think that there are thoughtful people being added to this group. So the one bank chief's information security officer is chosen by the Maryland Bankers Association, emphasis on Maryland. The hospital chief, the hospital CISO, designated by the Maryland Hospital Association. My concern is with number 23 and 24, a water systems chief, CISO, designated by the National Association of Water Companies, and the electric company person designated by a national Edison Electric Institute. I just wonder, hypothetically, we could get a water expert from Wyoming. I wonder whether there's any Like, we really kind of want them to be invested in Maryland. Or did you think about that? Am I overthinking it? And then I also, EPIC, number 25, great choice. And of course, NIST on the next page, excellent. But 23 and 24 caught my eye and concern a little bit from national.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have a water association. I mean, I'd have to go back to the council and ask, but we could look for both of those. I mean, once again, there are people, you know, who are currently there, but they were previously appointed by. It was complicated.
My suggestion, I don't know whether colleagues would agree, designated by the National Association of Water Companies isn't the problem to me. It's a random water systems chief information security officer who could be from anywhere. Can we say?
Maryland.
Yes.
Yes, we could definitely do that.
Okay, and same on 24 with electric companies.
Yes.
Okay, so Maryland-based CISO for both of those?
Yes.
Number 23 and 24, and I'm fine if they're chosen by nationals. I just think they should be here. Devin, you good with that, colleagues? I don't know if that works for you.
Electric company one, some of them cross over and they cover multiple jurisdictions.
I
so
was thinking about that,
that one
Senator
might-
Augustine.
that
What if
one
it's,
may-
yeah, an electric company CISO serving
Yeah, something like that.
residents in Maryland?
Right.
You know, Maryland households, Maryland
Because
customers?
they do cross.
I agree.
Thank
So
you,
just because
guys.
they're based in DC doesn't mean they should be
Right.
ousted.
Excluded.
Right, excluded, but just not the Wyoming person.
Okay, if I may, Senators, there is a Maryland Association of Water that I know from my time at MDE.
Fabulous.
So we could definitely put that. For number 24, if you're looking for an electric company chief information officer, I think having that be from Maryland is fine. I don't think that there's an electric company association that's specifically with Maryland, but that can be worked, and I can put that amendment together.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so Devin, I think what Senator Augustine was thinking, and I did reflect on that for a second, PEPCO is based in DC, for instance, or there are folks who are based in DC, but they serve our constituents in Maryland. And that wouldn't bother this senator anyway, if they were, is that where you were going? Okay, so serving Maryland customers, serving Maryland residents, I think is the concept, but I don't
So-
think they have to be incorporated specifically in Maryland to be appointed to this.
If I may make a suggestion for sub 24, then what you would want to do is have one electric company chief CISO designated jointly by PEPCO and BG&E.
ARBA, we got the other, I mean, it's, there's a whole bunch of them, actually, electric companies. That
So is it the will of the committee to choose PEPCO as the designee for this position?
No.
Okay.
Let me just re-articulate sort of where I was coming from on that. Like, where we started on this conversation was we were trying to sort of keep it in the state of Maryland. And all that I think that myself and the vice chair are saying is that when it comes to the electric companies, they cross jurisdictions. And so we wouldn't want to exclude them because they may be headquartered in Delaware, or they may be headquartered in Washington, D.C., but they serve, and they only have one CISO, right, that serves their entire service area, which is significantly in our state. And that's what we just didn't want them to not, we wouldn't want them to be excluded. That was
Better than I did. Agreed.
Got it.
Hey, guys, have we reached some kind of consensus on, at least conceptually, do we have the confidence that Devin can,
Each service area includes Maryland? Something like that?
Devin, are we confident conceptually to take up the Hester Amendment at this point with these tweaks? Okay. All in favor of the Hester amendments? Did we have a motion? We had a favorable from Senator Augustine, a second.
As amended and amended.
Senator Kagan, second. Okay, all in favor of the tweaked Hester amendments to this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 294. Raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment carries. We now have Senate Bill 294 as amended in front of us. Senator Watson moves favorable. A second from, absolutely. Do any co-sponsors want to go on the bill? Okay, we have a co-sponsorship amendment. Okay, who wants to go? Raise your hand if you want to go on the bill as a co-sponsor. Go around the horn. Got Senator Brooks, Senator Hester. My name's already on this bill. Senator Simon Ayer, Senator Kagan, Watson, and Attar. Okay, all in favor of the sponsor amendment? Separate sponsor amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? That sponsor amendment carries. Now we have Senate Bill 294 as
Let
amended.
me make sure I've got it. Hester,
Okay.
Brooks, Simon Ayer, Kagan, Watson, and Attar.
Okay, good. Okay, all in favor of that? Raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment carries. Senate Bill 294 as amended. Is there a motion? Senator Watson moves favorable. Senator Hester second. Discussion, all in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. And next, we're going to go to 309. Senator Simon Ayer has asked that that be held for one session. We'll take it up at the next voting session. Stacy, we're going to go back to you. We're going to go over to you for the first time. Senate Bill 337, a Senator Kagan bill.
Senate Bill 337, Elections, Local Boards of Elections and Boards of Canvassers, Open Meeting Requirements, Local Boards of Elections Transparency Act. This bill requires each local board of elections to make publicly available on its website each open meeting agenda and other specified information at least 48 hours in advance of an open meeting, unless the meeting is being held due to an emergency, natural disaster, or other unanticipated situation. And two, to also provide live video streaming of open meetings with certain exceptions and vote canvasses, and maintain complete and unedited archived video recordings of the meetings and canvasses for a minimum of 5 years. There is one amendment offered by Senator Kagan. You can find that on page 61 of your packet. And this amendment strikes the provisions in the bill regarding the streaming of vote canvasses.
Jared Demarinis on the line here for questions. Okay, Senator Kagan.
Colleagues, this passed the House 132 to 1, and it just has the local boards of elections live streaming their meetings. What's amended out, as Stacy said, is the canvas, which got complicated and possibly expensive. So Delegate Corman and I decided to jettison that. It just gives the same transparency for local Board of Elections meetings as the state board and all our other departments and agencies already do. And it's the same parameters. So with that, I would move the amendment to narrow the bill.
Okay, we've got a motion from Senator Kagan, second from Senator Augustine. Discussion, all in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, amendment carries. We've got Senate Bill 337 as amended before us. Is there a motion? Senator Kagan moves favorable, Senator Augustine second. Discussion, all in favor of Senate Bill 337 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries. Next up, Senate Bill 352, Stacy.
Senate Bill 352, Baltimore County Republican Party Central Committee Elections. This bill reduces from 4 to 3 the number of members elected to the Baltimore County Republican Party Central Committee from each councilmanic district in Baltimore County. There are no amendments and there was no opposition at the hearing.
Okay, is anybody from Baltimore County want to make a motion on this one? Senator Brooks is favorable and a second. Or Republican. Okay, who wants? We got Brooks as the favorable. Who wants to jump to be the second? Senator Simon Ayer as second. Okay, no amendments. All in favor. Senate Bill 352. Raise your hand. All opposed. That motion carries. Devin, we're going to go back to you. Senate Bill 354.
Senate Bill 354, Maryland Inventory of Cemeteries and Burial Sites Workgroup Establishment. This bill establishes a Maryland Inventory of Cemeteries and Burial Sites Workgroup staffed by the Maryland Historical Trust in the Office of Cemetery Oversight. By December 1, 2025, the workgroup must report its findings and recommendations to the Governor and General Assembly. This bill takes effect July 1, 2025 and terminates June 30th, 2026. There is an amendment from the sponsor beginning on page 68 of your packet. That amendment strikes the Office of Cemetery Oversight from the staffing provisions of the work group. Important to note that this bill is a standalone bill and is not part of the other bills in the Finance Committee package.
Okay. Yes, Vice Chair Kagan.
Mr. Chair, colleagues, in my district and around the county, there's been a lot of work done to identify, locate, and restore with dignity, respect, and education about our history of local cemeteries. I think this is really important work. One of my almost constituent, was one of the witnesses. But I strongly support this. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I'd like to move favorable on the bill with the small amendment on it, Devin.
Okay, well, first let's take up the amendment. Anybody want to move
Favorable on the amendment.
Okay, well, Vice Chair Kagan, you want to move the amendment? And then second, who's got a second? Senator Carrozza. Yeah, question from Senator Augustine.
Just confirmation that the Maryland Historical Trust has agreed to staff it, that they're okay with being responsible for this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
And in front of us, discussion? Vice Chair, Senator Washington?
Yeah, just to Senator Kagan's comments, and also thank you, Devin, for the lead in on that. Yeah, there's a package of bills. I'm not going to block this, but what I'm going to tell you is unlikely to pass in the House, but it's an important topic. There is a move to put things together, but we can go ahead and move this, but just,
I mean, just to say that we had a conversation, and as Devin pointed out, this bill is separate than those four. I mean, it's really a standalone bill, and so I just, that's.
I understand how
yeah.
we're talking about it.
I understand. Okay.
So I'm good.
Okay, we have the amendment. Is there a motion on the bill as amended? Okay, let's take up a sponsorship amendment from Senator Kagan. Does anybody else want to be on the piece of legislation? Senator Washington and Kagan and Brooks. Okay, so a separate amendment, sponsorship amendment, favorable motion, second. All in favor? Raise your hand on the sponsorship amendment. Now we add that to this bill. Senate Bill 354, as amended, is before us. A favorable motion from Senator Kagan, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of Senate Bill 354 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. Let's next move to Senate Bill 361. Senator Hester.
Senate Bill 361, Election Law, Influence on Voters' Voting Decision by Use of Fraud, Prohibition. This bill alters the definition of fraud to include the use of synthetic media, and it defines synthetic media to mean a specified image, audio recording, or video recording intentionally created or manipulated with the use of generative, artificial intelligence, or other digital technology to create a realistic but false image or recording. The bill also adds fraud to the list of prohibited acts by which a person could willfully and knowingly influence or attempt to influence a voter's voting decision through the use of force, threat, menace, intimidation, bribery, reward, or offer of reward, and now that's prohibited to use fraud. There are no amendments.
Okay, Senator Hester, any questions, any comments, any motions?
Jared is here to answer questions. I appreciate all his work on the bill, all Stacy's work, and
Okay,
I move it favorable.
Did Senator Washington, did you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a message that was concerned about the differentiation between positive and negative forms of influence, sort of whether this could abridge free speech in the way that it's defined now. Jared, maybe you can coach us on this. Is this tight enough that it will do what Senator Hester and all of us surely believe is important without muzzling inappropriately? You are muted, Jared.
Yes, Senator. I believe that this is a very tight, narrow interpretation. It is limited in its, effect, but it is as the state prosecutor was here talking about it, fraud is a very high standard. The use of synthetic media is just a tool in order which we can prove that fraud exists in attempting to influence a voter in I would say, an untoward or devious manner. And that is not necessarily just using synthetic media in, for parodies or for any sort of attempting to influence, such as, photoshopping your photos or doing the other activities there, because it is not depicting something in a realistic manner that is, for that a reasonable individual would produce a fundamentally different understanding of that impression of that candidate. So I think that this is a narrowly tailored and will survive constitutional challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's reassuring.
Okay, so where are we? No amendments, you say? Okay, Senate Bill. Any questions? I'm sorry. What am I missing?
Nothing.
Okay, Senator Hester, Senate Bill 361.
Move favorable.
Moves favorable. Second from Senator Augustine. All in favor, Senate Bill 361, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 361 carries. Next, move to Senate Bill 399.
Senate Bill 399, Natural Resources, Wildland Areas, Overhead Transmission Lines. This bill exempts, subject to specified conditions, certain lands from continuing to be designated as part of the Big Savage Mountain Wildland, Bear Pen Wildland, or Dan's Mountain Wildland. More specifically, the existing boundaries of each wildland will not include any next-era energy transmission line if the line runs parallel to the existing Potomac-Edison transmission line, and a certificate of public convenience and necessity is obtained from the Public Service Commission. Bill further provides that it is the intent of the General Assembly that nothing in the bill be construed as a recommendation that a proposed next-era transmission line be issued a CPCN from the Public Service Commission. There is an amendment. It's somewhere, unfortunately, loose on your desk. Got a little bit after the amendment packet got put together, but it's amendment number 953320/1 from Senator Feldman. The amendment requires that an applicant for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct a transmission line in wildland to provide certain wildland impact mitigation guarantees as part of that application.
Okay, just a little context. Just we started a conversation last week with this. I think Senator Augustine weighed in about, we do need transmission lines and the like. This project should not be conflated with the Piedmont thing. This is a completely separate thing. In Western Maryland, Garrett, Allegheny, pretty important project. And this still has to go through the CPCN process. It's important. Like, this does not suggest in any way that this is the alignment that's suggested here. We're not putting our thumb on the scale, but for purposes of modeling and studying, this alignment, which is close to the existing transmission lines being adjacent as part of the analysis and comparative, is what the bill as drafted does. So again, I think it's significant that DNR has not weighed in opposition, having any problem with the bill, which is significant in terms of what the bill is attempting to do. But I did put this language in because there is this sort of environmental thing. I think this language kind of puts a little bit more of a oomph about if in fact the project with this alignment were to be approved by CPCN, which it might not, under those circumstances, then there's some protection there, some mitigation to be considered. So I'm more comfortable with the bill with this extra language, but I still, even without this amendment, I think there's a need for the bill and for purposes of this transmission project that is, again, not anywhere, should not be conflated with what we discussed earlier with the Piedmont thing. So it's a McKay bill, but it's important, I think, for Garrett County. But I'll just put it out there for discussion, and that's what that amendment's context. So I did not move the amendment, but I'll move the amendment. A second from Senator Augustine. Any discussion on just this amendment language? Okay. Okay, well, all in favor of Senate Bill 399's amendment, this amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendment carries. Now back on the bill. Discussions about the bill as amended at Senate Bill 399. We've got Senator Hester.
I was just curious, I thought I had requested an amendment on this. It was the sunset amendment?
You did bring it up, I think, at the last
I mean,
meeting.
I actually I think I sent it to somebody for drafting, but it's not here. So I could just, the language that I had was that if the PSC approves a CPCN with an alternate route that does not go through the wildlands, or if the PSC denies or rejects a CPCN for this project, the bill would sunset. That was suggested by somebody in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did raise the last time. I mean, we could, if everybody understands what it is, we could put it on the bill, or we could put it on the floor if the bill passes. I mean, here, explain one more time. It's a sunset provision. If you recall, conversation was, this language is here, and if it turns out, depending on what ultimately materializes with the CPC, you still have this language out there that. Why don't you just kind of refresh everybody's memory about what we're doing here?
So basically, if they decide to go somewhere else, I thought it was a little messy to have this exception still in the code. And so I requested a sunset, and I, for some reason, don't have the amendment. But the gist of the amendment was that the bill would sunset, one, if the PSC approves a CPCN with an alternate route, or two, if the PSC denies or rejects the CPCN for this project. So that's making it very clear that this is just for this specific point in time for this project.
And it looks like the amendment has been drafted, it was just never submitted to me. So I can pull it up in the system, I can read you the language.
Thank you.
So it would say, this act shall be abrogated and of no further force and effect if the Public Service Commission, one, approves their certificate of public convenience and necessity for an alternate next era transmission line, it's got more technical language than that, that does not pass through the wildland, or two, denies CPCN for the transmission line. The commission must notify the Department of Legislative Services within 5 days after determination under that section, so that we would know when it sunsets.
Okay, so just again, in the event that that this alignment is not selected, that you don't have this loose language, exemption language like hanging in the code. So I think that's the intent, right? So, okay, any further discussion on the Hester amendment, the sunset language? No, do you move your amendment? Yeah, just move it. Second from Senator Kagan. Okay, any discussion? All in favor of the Hester amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. Now we have the Bill 399 as amended in front of us. Is there a motion from Senator Augustine? Motion? No, from anybody? Anybody? Somebody? Okay. Favorable from Senator Augustine, second from Senator Carrozza. Since there was a little push, I think I remember some discussion. Well, good. We could do a roll call on this one if you want. Let's do a roll call, just so there's no.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
I'm closer than I was on this, but I'd still like a little more time on abstaining.
Senator Gallion abstains. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes. Senator Attar? Senator Attar, yes. Senator Brooks? Senator Brooks abstains. Senator Carrozza?
Yes.
Senator Carrozza, yes. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington? Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonair?
I'm a little, yes.
Senator Salmonair, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Okay, yes, so the bill carries 9-0 to 2 abstentions. The abstentions coming from Senator Brooks and Senator Gallion. And that motion, again, does carry on that vote. Let's next move to Senate Bill 436. This is a bill we had a discussion about last time. I will, and Devin can, we do have some, well, why don't you refresh everybody's memory about the bill and then the change in the firefighters' position on the bill now, on this study bill, if you recall,
Yes, sir.
it's a study bill.
Yes, sir. Senate Bill 436, Maryland Department of Labor, study on building code requirements for single staircase buildings. This bill requires the Maryland Department of Labor to conduct a study and make recommendations regarding potential legislative or regulatory changes for building code requirements for single staircase buildings in the state. The construction would be authorized for up to 6 stories. By December 1, 2025, Labor must report its findings to the Governor and General Assembly and specified standing committees. The bill takes effect July 1, 2025. There are 2 sets of amendments beginning on page 69 of your packet offered by the sponsor. The first amendment adds the state fire marshal to the study and extends the study period till December 1, 2026. The second amendment, set of amendments on page 70, add the Professional Firefighters of Maryland, the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs Association, the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association, and the Maryland State Firefighters Association to the study. With these amendments, the Maryland State Firefighters Association no longer opposes the bill.
Okay, we got a motion from Senator Augustine on the, let's take a motion, then we'll take discussion. Senator Gallion is second on the amendments. Now Senator Carrozza has questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the committee, I attended the Fire EMS caucus meeting on Monday and brought up the fact with the Maryland State Firefighters Association that this was only a study, that we should be able to work through it, because they initially were pretty strongly opposed. So I was glad to see that we're moving forward with the study, but with more involvement. So that's my update.
Okay. Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Devin, can you remind us, is this affordable housing primarily?
Yes, it is.
So I love that we're adding more fire experts, and I think this amendment is great and all that. I worry that we are going to be segregating our Maryland residents and our constituents, and that some of our constituents can survive a fire and some can't. That because there's only one egress, and if the fire is in a stairwell, they are dead or seriously injured. And it seems to me that the work group will be a bunch of smart people who will figure out all of this. But I think we should have a poverty person or an affordable housing person or something who is added to this so that their voice, the voice of the people that they represent, are in the room as well.
If you're asking me to answer that, Senator, I think that's...
Are they represented currently on this group?
They are not represented
Okay,
currently in this group.
so
Maybe I misunderstood the bill, but I thought it was beyond affordable. I thought that, are you saying it's just limited to low income? That was.
No, but it may disproportionately include, because
I just wanted to
fancy
be clear, 'cause
high-rises.
on the bill overall, that wasn't my understanding of the
Understand, Senator
bill.
Croza. Fancy
I
high-rises
thought
in
it was the
Ocean
housing
City
shortage.
that are more than 6 stories or that are 6 stories or more are going to have, could have 2 or more, and elevators and all sorts of lovely amenities. And so to trim costs, there could be a more affordable housing for our hardworking constituents, and they will have 1 stairwell. And that's what this is going to have a conversation about. And I worry about this. This bill actually randomly woke me up in the middle of the night worrying about this and worrying about people dying.
Okay, but you're worrying about, it's a study. I mean,
I'm
it's
worried about
not
a study.
doing anything.
Yeah, but if we don't have the right people in the room, Mr. Chair, we may
Okay.
not get the right
I don't know if I
outcome
agree with
and
that.
not have the
but-
right
okay.
voice.
I mean, we have several states studying this topic. It's all over Europe. This is a common practice. But okay, so what is your suggestion? What is your?
The suggestion, and I asked inappropriately of council, and colleagues, you guys have suggestions. We could say a person representing affordable housing nonprofit, or we could say poverty, a nonprofit representing poverty. Who's got suggestions? I just think that one person in the room would be beneficial.
We ever had somebody from that subgroup participate?
I couldn't possibly speak to the whole history of
Well, so
Maryland's
the
history.
first conversation I remember having about affordable housing, they are going to build something smaller. It's going to be different, and they're going to recoup their cost. We were told that when we had our very first conversation. So the fact that they might want to skimp in some places, I'll use that term, is not surprising to me. And this is just another study to talk about, do you need 2 stairwells? Do you need 1? It is being doing other places. I don't think you need to add anybody else to this. I think the experts, those who got to build it, those who have to rescue people and fight the fires, are your key people that need to be involved. That's just my opinion.
So I think skimping on light fixtures is fine. Skimping on the quality of the stove or refrigerator is fine. I think skimping on a stairwell to save somebody's life is not fine.
Okay, so I think Senator
I'm
Watson's
looking
point.
for colleagues.
Well, wait a second,
yeah,
Vice
please,
Chair.
please.
So what is the organization or entity that you think, with the one person that's going to be embodying and represent, I mean, who are you specifically, what organization exists that would accomplish the goal that you're trying to seek with this? I mean,
If I may make a
Sure.
suggestion, Mr. Chair and members. Page 2 of the bill, line 20D, in carrying out the study, the department shall consult with a fire engineer, a representative of a union that represents firefighters. You could add in 3, and we're adding other things too. You add in a representative of an affordable housing coalition or something to that effect.
They're consulting with on line 20. So they're not actually members of the group. And here, it's specifically a person from Group A, Group B, and Group C, and Group D. We have a bunch of fire folks, and then we're checking in with the union and stuff. I'm not quite sure that we've got.
All of the additions to this bill offered by the sponsor are in that same section. On page 2, in
Yes,
line 22,
I see that.
they're all under the department shall consult with.
I think your suggestion could work. Unless-
Senator Washington, do you have any suggestions to
Well-
address the concerns raised by the Vice Chair on this study bill?
Absolutely. I mean, we have DHCD here, and I know that they're very familiar with those.
Yeah, Chuck, do you
people.
have any suggestions as
So
to who
there-
will represent
there-
the interests
I
of
don't
the?
know if there's any agencies on the work group, but within that division, there's the Maryland Affordable Housing Trust, right? Okay, so that's one.
Okay, well, Chuck, put you on the spot, because we want to move on to other bills, so you kind of I want you to come up with a really good idea.
Understood, and I would like you to move on to the bill that I'm waiting for, too. So I think that you might have the Community Development Administration in mind inside of DHCD. They're the ones that actually, and I don't know if this is what you're trying to get at, Vice Chair, but they're the ones that finance
yeah.
all of the affordable housing in the state. I don't know if that's the direction you wanted to go into, or, no?
So, like in our county, I'm looking at, the group that you're talking about is called Housing Initiative Partnership in my county. Like they're the ones who I turn to, like you're saying, like for when we're helping people with affordable housing, but their mission is providing this safe, affordable housing, like they're mission driven. So maybe it's a nonprofit that is, yeah.
So they specialize in safe, affordable housing.
Right, like a
I mean,
nonprofit.
this is what Economic Action Maryland is focused on: safe, affordable housing, free from discrimination, harassment, and code violations.
So it's a similar sort of thing.
Perfect.
But instead of being so overly prescriptive,
Yeah.
we know like what we want it to be. Like, you following on that, Devin? Yes or no? I was talking to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was asking if you're following what we're
Yes,
saying.
I am.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I've got it.
I would support that. I think that's the voice that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Being a part of that.
Okay, so Senator Hester, that magic language, why don't you recite that magic language?
It says, this is just
Or the Augustine, what?
safe, affordable housing, free from discrimination, harassment, and code violations. That's what,
harassment, that's too
No.
broad. But a nonprofit has
Safe, affordable.
safe and affordable housing. Nonprofit organization that works with,
Got it.
advocates for safe and affordable housing.
Okay. Devin,
Got it.
you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so we have this, the Walt Stryker amendment that we're modifying and tweaking with this language. Does everybody get that? Yes. And there was a motion. Okay, Senator Gallion, you had a question, comment?
After the
Okay, well, you want to take up the amendment first?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, the amendment moved by Vice Chair Kagan, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of this tweaked amendment? Raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment carries. Now we're going to go to Senator Gallion
So I
on
just,
the study bill.
on this study bill, I just texted the chair of the Fire EMS Coalition. Senator Croza did, my understanding from Senator McKay, who's the chair of that he just said they haven't seen the amendments. So, I mean, we explained what they are, but you were at that meeting, I wasn't, so.
So I was at the meeting on Monday where it was discussed. Then as a follow-up after the meeting, Bob Phillips, who is the Maryland State Firemen's Association rep, contacted me to say that they had worked with the bill sponsor on the amendments and that they were now fine. Now that's with the Maryland State Firemen's
I got an email.
Association. Firefighters.
I got an email from him to that effect as
Okay,
well. We've got a motion on the bill as amended by Senator Augustine. Is there a second from Senator Washington? Senate Bill 436 as amended. Discussion, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, to 10-1 with Sen. Okay. 9-2 with Senators Gallion and Simonaire in the red column, 9-2. That carries. Let's next move to Senate Bill 529. Senator Brooks.
Senate Bill 529, Business Occupations and Professions, Professional Engineers Examination. This bill requires an applicant for licensure as a professional engineer under the work experience only option to take and pass the Fundamentals of Engineering examination prior to taking the Principles and Practice of Engineering examination. There are no amendments and no opposition. If the board cannot achieve unanimity, they do not take a position. Some members of the board, from my research, took the work experience only option and felt as if they may not have been able to pass the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. In addition, there are some indeterminate number of individuals from out of state that use Maryland to receive reciprocity in their home state. There are no amendments and there was no opposition.
Okay, just a reminder, nobody opposed this bill, but that said, there's no amendments. But I know, okay, well, Senator Hester, I know that you have experience with this exam.
I could never pass it now. I did talk, Senator Brooks and I had a good conversation with them. I still have unanswered questions, so I will be abstaining.
Okay, got a motion favorable, Senator Augustine. Second from Senator Brooks. Let's do a roll call. Maybe somebody else has a, Moria, we've got Senate Bill 529, clean, favorable motion in front of us. We'll do a roll call.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Will you come back to me? I'm pulling up the bill.
All right, Senator Augustine? Yes. Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson? Senator Watson abstains. Senator Attar? Yes. Senator Attar, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza? Yes. Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester? Senator Hester abstains. Senator Washington?
For the time being.
Don't have to be
Okay, Senator Washington abstains. Senator Simonaire? Senator Simonaire abstains. Senator Feldman? Or are we going back to-
I'm yes. And what's the vice chair do?
Sure, I'll vote yes.
Okay, so that is a 7 votes yes
4.
and 4 abstentions, so the bill does carry.
Mr. Chair, may I say something?
Yes, Senator Brooks?
Okay, yeah. Senator Hester, I want to thank you for the meeting that we had the other day. And that question you had asked, what does the bill do? I went and did some additional research on that. And what it says, it aims to standardize the licensure process for professional engineers by requiring all applicants, regardless of their educational background, to pass the fundamentals of engineering and exam before taking the principal exam. Currently, applicants with 12 or more years of satisfactory engineering experience can be.
Ben, Bill passed already. We're good. Don't mess. Yeah, it's movies on. It's on. It's to the floor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's go to Senate Bill 580, April, the Washington County Senators.
Senate Bill 580, Washington County Public Safety Buildings Used for Agritourism. This bill adds Washington County to the list of jurisdictions where an existing agricultural building used for agritourism is exempt from obtaining a change of occupancy permit if, one, the building's use for agritourism does not require it to be occupied by more than 200 people at any one time, and two, the total width of egress for the building meets specified building code standards. There is an amendment in the voting packet, amendment number 603920/1 from Senator Quarterman. The amendment is technical. It just adds the Washington County to a different part of the bill that has to do with, that says that section applies to the counties specified in that list. It's a technical amendment, largely.
Motion on the technical amendment to the Washington County Local Delegation Bill. Favorable, second from the Vice Chair. All in favor of the technical amendment, raise your hand. All opposed. Senate Bill 580, as amended, is favorable from Senator Augustine, second from the Vice Chair. Discussion. All in favor, Senate Bill 580 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed. That bill carries. Senate Bill 601, Stacy.
Senate Bill 601, Education Dependent Children of Service Members Advance Enrollment Procedures. This bill requires local school systems to allow a dependent child of a service member to apply for advance enrollment in a public school and specifies requirements for advance enrollment procedures. The Secretary of Veterans and Military Families, in consultation with specified entities, must publish and maintain information on 1, advance enrollment procedures, and 2, any assistance and services available to service members regarding advance enrollment. There is one amendment offered by Senator Brooks on page 72 of your voting packet. This amendment, 1, conforms terminology to the updated versions in Senator Simon Ayer Veterans package of bills, clarifies that a dependent child may remain enrolled in a school until completion of the highest grade level at the school, subject to a case-by-case review by the local school system, and the local school system must prioritize continuity of education in making these determinations. Further clarifies that a dependent child using advanced enrollment is required to have access to all courses and program for which the child qualifies.
Senator Brooks, do you want to add?
Second.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Is this the Kazam amendment?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to move the amendment, the Brooks amendment on 601, and a second from Senator Augustine, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed. Senate Bill 601 as amended is before us.
Second.
Favorable from the sponsor, second from Senator Augustine. Discussion. All in favor of Senate Bill 601 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Stacy, Senate Bill 615 from Senator Kagan.
Senate Bill 615, Election Law, Petitions and Ballot Questions, Contents, Plain Language Requirements, and Procedures. This bill makes changes to the state election law relating to 1, information included on each petition signature page for a petition to place a question on the ballot and on the ballot for each ballot question, and 2, deadlines for the preparation and certification of ballot questions, and finally, publication of ballot questions. There is one amendment in your package beginning on page 73. This amendment requires that the designated preparer of a question to review any comments received about that question that were submitted during the comment period that is established under the bill. And then the preparer must make any necessary changes to that question within 3 days and submit the certified plain text of the question to the state board for publication on its website on the 4th day after the comment period closes. The amendment alters the time period when the state board must post the complete text of specified information to be included on the ballot from 65 days to 90 days before the general election. There was no opposition at the hearing.
Sarah Kagan?
Colleagues, we've passed the simplified ballot language twice in 2 slightly different forms. This is one that we spent a lot of time working on over the interim, took the very best of like 6 different states and the laws that they have out of like 31 states that have laws on this. And this is, I think, legislation that is going to work to make sure that our voters aren't being, confronted with jargon, doublespeak, legalese, and passive voice and redundancy. I'm really proud of this bill.
Are you going to move the amendment?
I would like to move the amendment
Okay.
that makes it even better.
Okay. Second from Senator Augustine. Any discussion about the amendment? Yes, Senator Carozza.
Just a question, and I'm all for the, simpler language so our voters understand. However, when we, on reviewing the comments, sometimes during this comment period, and it says make any necessary changes, it's one, you have the simplicity of the language, but then you also have, if language can be drafted in a way that can be leading in one way or the other. And I'm assuming sometimes from the comments that you may have people who may think that the way the language is drafted could possibly be leading. When it says, and that's a pretty serious issue. So when it says make any necessary changes to the question, who's going to make that decision on whether there would be changes to the question?
It's a good question. Jared, do you want to go on that, or you want me to start? Go ahead.
Sure. It would be the preparer. So the preparer puts it out, they would receive the comments, and then the preparer would make the changes. And then on the 4th day, it would get published. If there's any legal challenges, then the clock would start to see at that point there if there would be legal challenges against that language at that period.
So can you give me an example, when you say prepare, like who are, like, give me an example.
For a constitutional, like the Secretary of State is the preparer of constitutional questions at the state, right? So they would do the plain language and then seek public comment on that plain language of that question in that period there. Then they could revise the way they wrote it, or keep it the way it is, and then post it. If any of the individuals find that it doesn't meet or doesn't conform with the legal standards for it, then they can institute a legal action at that point. But
And all of this,
and on a
Senate-
county question, it's the county attorneys.
And if I can add, Jared, one of the reasons why we're moving the timetable up is we want any legal challenges, any negotiation, any conversation, and publication to be done really early so that the ballot can be finalized and get to our troops abroad in plenty of time.
I understand that point, and again, this is more of a process.
Yeah, no, totally.
So during this process of the Secretary of State, if it's at the state level or as the preparer, or at the county level, that the new language, this simple ballot question language is put out to the public for comment. You have then the process of the comments coming back that are either, what I'm hearing, they're reviewed at the Secretary of State or at the county level. And you have 2 issues. You have the simplicity of the language, but then you also have, you could possibly have comments that the question could be leading as in the drafting of it. So that's what I'm trying to understand, that if, how those challenges might, are we saying that the Secretary of State could make changes to clarify and maybe make it more neutral as opposed to if it was being interpreted as leading, or are we saying if you've got a problem with it, you've got to sue, which, could be delay in the whole ballot question. So that's what I'm trying to understand with this comment period, because I think it's important that the public has the comment period, but then what is done if there are actually some serious issues that come up in the comment period, how are they addressed?
Jared, do you want to talk
Sure,
about the fairness and accuracy of the language, let alone the simplicity of it?
Well,
Because that's what this bill covers. But what about it's tilted one way or another?
I guess that is what currently goes on, right? Like the preparer of the question right now is the Secretary of State and the county attorneys. As to the fairness or anything, the tilting of it, I think that they're two separate issues compared to what this bill is trying to do, which is just talk about plain language and simplifying the language for a ballot issue question. Basically, if a person wanted to challenge the language today of a ballot issue, that it was tilted or that it is not representative of the actual issues at hand, they would have that recourse right now. At least in this scenario here, with a comment period here, they can make that comment that the plain language tilts it a certain way, that the preparer might then change it or try to make it more neutral.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
but so that's kind of
okay.
on them. But it's on the preparer to kind of look at the plain language and making sure that it reflects the intent of the ballot language. And as the senator mentioned, by moving up the deadlines, it allows any litigation portion of it to be resolved quicker so that we can get the ballots published by the 65th day.
Okay, so that response is helpful in that what you're confirming is that right now people can challenge on the content of the question, but they don't understand the question because it's not written in English. Now they're going to see the ballot question simplified so they can understand it, which still, I think what it could do, it could open up comments, legitimate comments that somebody should at least look at. So in the simplified language, that it could possibly, if there were some who thought it was misleading, that you're saying the Secretary of State would then, or at the county level, could then make the necessary changes to address those concerns to hopefully then avoid a lawsuit and delay. That's where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's all the way it
Okay.
goes now, but it'll be simpler to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any additional questions about the amendment, the Kagan amendment? Okay, did anybody move the Kagan amendment?
Yes.
We had a motion, second from the vice chair. All in favor of the Kagan amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. We have Senate Bill 615 as amended before us. Is there a motion? The sponsor moves favorable. Senator Augustine seconds. Discussion. All in favor of Senate Bill 615 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Let's go to Senator Giles, Senate Bill 617. Let's just try to jam through here.
Senate Bill 617, State Board of Cosmetologists Licensing Eyelash Extensions. Excuse me. This bill establishes a limited license specific to providing eyelash extension services issued by the State Board of Cosmetologists and expands the definition of provide aesthetic services to also include providing eyelash extension services. The bill incorporates licensing requirements and regulation of the licensees into the current statutory provisions that apply to other types of limited licenses issued by the board. There were no amendments and no opposition.
Okay, got a favorable motion from Senator Augustine, a second from, who was the second? Senator Watson. Discussion. Okay, this bill is clean. Senate Bill 617, all in favor of Senate Bill 617 clean, raise your hand. All opposed, that carries unanimously. Next up, a bill from Senate Bill 656 from the Baltimore County Board of Education. Stacy.
Okay. Senate Bill 656, Baltimore County Board of Education, alterations of elected member districts and establishment of redistricting process. This bill requires that, beginning with the 2034 general election, the members of the Baltimore County Board of Education, currently elected from each of the 7 councilmanic districts in the county, must instead be elected from each of the 7 school board districts established through a specified redistricting process. There are no amendments, and the committee has received a local letter.
Okay, it's a local bill. Okay, Senator Brooks is favorable. We'll go second from Senator Washington. Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 656, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously. Senate Bill 680, Devin?
Senate Bill 680, Real Estate Commission Continuing Education Requirements Alterations. This bill alters several continuing education requirements for the renewal of a license for real estate brokers, associate real estate brokers, and real estate salespersons. Specifically, the bill alters clock hour requirements, course topics, course instructor selection, and course application fees. There is an amendment on page 76 of your packet from the sponsor that clarifies that, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the continuing education courses shall be taught by a qualified instructor with real estate practice experience.
Okay, Senator Carrozza, would you like to move that amendment?
I'd like to move the amendment, and this is basically, this amendment clarifies that the authority for the course providers to select instructors overrides any conflicting requirements of statute, regulation, or policy. The House bill, there was an intention to put the amendment on it, but it was not added. We want to add it to the Senate bill and then hopefully be consistent when the House bill comes over.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
Questions?
Okay, we have the amendment. On the amendment, Senator Kagan.
Senator Carrozza, I've been working in real estate for 3 months. Am I a qualified instructor? I have experience in the real estate industry.
From the information that, again, this is just a clarifying amendment. The information that was provided to me is that 95% of the courses are approved already, but there's only a couple of courses that, quote, require train the trainer. According to the real estate, Maryland Realtors, the problem is that the commission has gone on years without conducting the train the trainer courses. So therefore, this amendment is to address that issue.
So let me try that. I heard everything you said, and that makes sense. I support the bill. I support the concept, but we get into the details sometimes here. And someone who has been working in the real estate industry, it says who is experienced in the real estate industry. Literally, I could have been in the industry for a few weeks, a few months, and that doesn't seem like that would make me qualified. Your amendment is not clear enough that there should be a minimum period of time or a minimum certification.
Hey, Bill.
So were you in touch with the Realtors? Can they?
Yeah, they are.
Bill's here.
Bill Castelli, why don't you
Bill,
come
do
up
have
here
thoughts on this?
to the Vice Chair's point that the word qualified is not clear enough or that the word experience is not prescriptive enough. How would you respond?
I would say there's no.
Why don't you identify yourself for the record?
Okay, sorry. Bill Castelli on behalf of the Maryland Realtors. And there's no requirement in the code about that, so it really is up to the course provider to choose the instructor. So they would make that determination of whether you're qualified to teach it.
Okay, and we're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. Any discussion? All in favor of the Carrozza amendment, clarifying amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment not carries. We've got Senate Bill 680 as amended before us. Is there a motion from the sponsor? Senator Carrozza. Okay, 680 and a second from the Vice Chair. All in favor of 680 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. Next up, Senate Bill 775. April.
Senate Bill 775, work group to study implementation of a statewide 311 non-emergency telephone system. This bill establishes the work group to study the implementation of a statewide 311 non-emergency telephone system staffed by the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. The work group must report its findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly by November 1st, 2025. There is an amendment in your packet. This is on page 77 from Senator Kagan. The amendment strikes references to the system being statewide and instead refers to an expanded 311 non-emergency telephone system.
Expand on that at all?
Expand on that. So as colleagues, those of you who've been on this committee have heard me talking about 311 for quite a while as part of the way to lighten the load on our 911 systems and offices because they are overloaded. 311 is working very well in 6 of our counties. Ideally, if I had a magic wand, I would like a statewide system so that 24 counties residents would all have access to 311, but the reality is that's expensive. We've been working on how to use AI, artificial intelligence, so as to benefit, and yet this is all a process. There's been a great study that's been done, and now we're about starting to figure out how to implement the results of the study. So this is a really quick work group. It's 5 months, probably 3 meetings. Vicki Gruber said that the DLS can even help with some of the admin parts of doing this, but DO-IT and MDEM and others, we are continuing to move forward with the results of the study. So we work towards spreading out 311, but not statewide. So that's why the word statewide is out. We can't afford it yet.
Are you going to move your amendment?
Move favorable on the amendment.
Okay, second. Sponsor moves it. Senator Augustine second. All in favor of the Kagan amendment, raise your hand. All opposed. Senate Bill 775 as amended is before us. Do I have a motion favorable?
Move as amended.
Okay, sponsor moves favorable on the bill as amended. Is there a second from Senator Watson? Senate Bill 775 as amended. I'll raise your hand if you are in favor of this bill. All opposed. This bill carries unanimously. 775 as amended. Next up, from the Carroll County Senators, Senate Bill 885. Stacy?
Senate Bill 885, Carroll County Board of Education Vacancy Procedures Alterations. This bill repeals the existing authority of the governor to appoint a new voting member to fill any vacancy on the Carroll County Board of Education. Instead, when a vacancy occurs 30 days or less before the candidate filing deadline for the primary election held in the second year of a vacating member's term, the Carroll County Commissioners must appoint a qualified individual to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the term until a successor is elected and qualifies. When a vacancy occurs 31 days or more before the candidate filing deadline for the primary election held in the second year of the vacating member's term, the county commissioners still must fill the vacancy, but only until an individual is elected and qualifies at the next general election. The elected individual must then fill the vacancy on the board for the remainder of the term until a successor is elected and qualifies. There are no amendments, and the committee has received a local letter.
Okay, favorable motion, yes? What?
Sorry, this is my bad. I dropped the ball on this. My notes in here, I had asked about a few different aspects of this bill. I support the local bill concept, but I asked about primary and not general since unaffiliated voters don't engage. And what about the student member on the Board of Education since they are a partial voting member and would or could fall under this bill. So Senator Reedy and I were supposed to meet and see whether an amendment would be needed. And so it's my bad, but I will commit to meeting with Senator Reedy to figure this out and then see whether there's a tweak.
Student members don't fall under the election law. They are selected in a different method.
Okay.
So they would not, no matter what happened with the student member, they would not fall under the provisions of
Good
this
to know.
bill.
That's helpful. Okay. So the other part was about primary and not general because unaffiliated voters are not included.
Okay, what are you asking? What do you want? What are you suggesting that?
I was supposed to, Senator Reedy and I were supposed to meet to see whether there was a tweak that should be done, but I don't.
Okay.
You're asking for a hold?
A brief hold, yes.
Okay, let's
I will
hold.
get to him, I
Okay,
promise.
let's hold 885.
Okay.
Senate Bill 887. Let's go next.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Senate Bill 887, County Boards of Education, reappointment of incumbent county superintendent authorization. This bill alters the timeline for reappointment of a county school superintendent. Under the bill, at any point during an incumbent school superintendent's term, a county board of education may take action at a public meeting to reappoint the incumbent superintendent to serve a new term of 4 years beginning the following July 1. This action, however, must be taken by March 1 of the year in which the contract is being renewed. The bill also removes the requirement that an incumbent superintendent notify the county board of their intent to be a candidate for reappointment. There is one amendment in your packet, beginning on page 78. The reprint begins on page 79. This restores that provision of current law that was stricken in the bill requiring county superintendent to notify the county board by February 1 in the year the term ends that the county superintendent intends to apply for reappointment. Further, it also allows the county board to reappoint an incumbent superintendent at any time after the end of the second year of the contract that is renewed versus at any time during those 4 years.
So this was
Second.
yeah, okay. We have a motion on the amendment and a second. Any further discussion? This was a result of the conversation I think we had last time. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. Senate Bill 887 as amended is before us. And we have a question from Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, this is my understanding, just refreshing my memory. So if the school board thinks the superintendent's doing a good job, this allows to re-up them sooner.
Correct.
What happens? 2 years sooner. What happens if the school board feels that the superintendent's not doing a good job? This would.
They have a contract.
So they'd still have to wait till that 4 years is up, right?
Well, they have a contract, and like any contract, there's probably provisions in the contract that allows them to break the contract should certain conditions present themselves. They could buy them out of their contract. They can do any multiple things that you can do in any normal contract. But our law requires them to have a contract for 4 years of their term.
So with this legislation, they could almost essentially get a 6-year contract then?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions before we take a vote up? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 887 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries. Oh, we have one dissent. Anybody else in the red? Okay, Senator Gallion is a red vote. That bill carries 10-1. You had your light on? Okay. Let's go to Senator Brooks, Senate Bill 929.
Senate Bill 929, Work Group on Mail-in Ballot Accessibility. This bill establishes a work group on mail-in ballot accessibility to examine processes and procedures in the state relating to mail-in ballot return, assess the impact on voters with disabilities of requiring mail-in ballots to be returned in paper form, collect information about current standards, practices and standards for accessible alternatives in other jurisdictions, evaluate alternatives, and consult with subject matter experts as needed. The State Board of Elections must provide staff for the work group, and the work group must report its findings and recommendations by December 31, 2025. The bill takes effect on June 1st of this year and terminates on June 30th, 2026. There is one amendment. There's actually two amendments being offered, but there's one amendment in your package on page 81 that's offered by Senator Kagan. So if you recall at the hearing, the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council said that for some reason they cannot be appointed by the governor. So this amendment just moves them. The executive director is appointed as a direct member, and they can choose a designee if the executive director can't participate. And it adds as a member a multilingual member with expertise in election administration. Okay. Also being offered by Senator Brooks would add 3 additional members to the work group. It would add a representative from Disability Rights Maryland, one from the Association of the Deaf, and one from the Maryland Association of Election Officials, the local organization Mayo.
Okay, the amendments are not in conflict, though?
No.
Okay, so Senator Carrozza, before we take up the 2 separate amendments, questions?
Do the amendments address security at all? I know this is a work group on mail-in ballot accessibility, but didn't know where we were with the security provisions.
That's definitely one of the issues that's going to be discussed, because that is probably the biggest concern with not having paper ballots. So there are several members of there that's already related to cybersecurity and election security.
So you're
as
saying
members.
the work group's going to address it,
Correct.
the security issues?
Correct.
Did we have a motion? I can't remember.
I mean, we're asking, we're just.
And
we
there's
have two
members
separate
on
amendments.
there directly related to being a cybersecurity expert and an election security expert.
That would be like line 25 on page.
Here, just this, before that seems to go to the underlying bill. What about the two amendments? Any problem?
I'll start with moving the amendments.
Okay, you want to separate them? How about, we have two separate amendments, so why don't we move, you're moving the Kagan amendment first. Is there a second from the sponsor of that amendment? Okay, any discussion about the Kagan amendment? Okay, all in favor of the Kagan amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries.
move the
Now,
Brooks amendment.
now we got the Brooks amendment, favorable from St. Augustine, second from Senator Brooks. Discussion, all in favor of the Brooks amendment. Okay, so now we have Senate Bill 829 with those, 929 with those two amendments in front of us. Back to you, Senator Carozza. We were in the,
And maybe it did affect the amendments as well, but I was trying to understand that those of us who are focused on the security issues and on the mail-in ballots, and some of us have raised issues about, why we think signature verification would be a good security measure. And with this work group on mail-in ballot accessibility, is it going to open up at least having some candid conversations about the security of these mail-in ballots?
Yes, that's part of the charge, I would think, of the work group.
Well, the goal of the work group is not necessarily the overarching issue of security of mail-in ballots. It's accessibility for individuals with disabilities. So, of course, security and returning ballots will be part of that question, because they're looking at what types and what methods of voting can be accessible to all individuals in the state who are voters. But security is going to be a very important consideration of that.
Okay, so this says work group on mail-in ballot accessibility.
Right.
But you kind of narrowed it to individuals with disabilities.
That's what it's for, yes.
So, and the reason I'm raising, and I think this committee has to have candid conversation, is some of us who would like to see more overall security in mail-in ballot process overall, we, at the same time, ensuring that individuals with disabilities have accessibility. There's some push and pull, like, for instance, on the whole signature verification issue. So, is this work group, is there a way, is this work group going to address those type of issues where you're trying to ensure that individuals with disabilities have the accessibility, but that you could possibly look at some of these other security measures, that could possibly include signature verifications, or at least have those conversations?
Stacy, okay, at this point, we're talking about this work group. Do you have anything else? Otherwise, we could do a roll call here.
Well, first I'll move the bill as
Yeah,
amended.
well, I think.
Did we already do that?
I think we already did. Didn't we do that? If we didn't, Senator Augustine did. And is there a second from Senator Brooks? Okay, we have it in front of us, and Senator Carozza, at this point, it's a work group. Let's do a roll call.
I'd like to speak before, okay.
You can speak to it, yeah, before we vote. You can
Before
speak
we
to it.
vote.
Sure.
This one's hard. I wonder whether NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, should be consulted or included on this. I am all for giving people with disabilities, language access, blind and deaf, the option to vote in all the ways that are safe, secure, accurate, and private. And that's all hard. To do all of those things is hard. And right now, they can come in during early voting or on election day, and they can vote with using earphones and have a private ballot. That is currently accessible to them. So that gives them 8 days right now during early voting and on election day. That's an option. They can vote by mail today and cast a vote with a trusted person who's going to help them fill it out. Trusted people help them balance their checkbook and pay their bills and get their prescriptions. And they have to have trusted people in their lives to function if they have disabilities that prevent easy access to doing some of this themselves. My concern about this work group is that it is very heavily tilted towards people with disabilities, not as tilted, and I partially agree with part of what Senator Carrozza said. I worry that we're going to get not necessarily sufficient expertise and votes and perspective from one person with cybersecurity and one person with security when they come back with recommendations. And I can tell you that I have had Zooms and meetings and conversations with internationally respected folks about election security, and I have asked whether there is any more opportunity to create options for people with disabilities to vote privately. And I have gotten back hard no. And so I'm worried about this, trying to open up, and work groups are great. I'm worried about the imbalance of the members of this work group, and we're going to come back with something that doesn't reflect what's plausible and secure.
Okay, Senator Hester.
I was just going to suggest that this could be done in collaboration with the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. They do these studies like that. The guy who we just had, just did the study on the water, and they could maybe take this on with the work group. Like the work group could consult with. No, just an idea.
Anybody else want to?
No.
No. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm willing to speak to the bill if that's okay.
Yeah,
Chair.
absolutely.
I'm
We're
definitely
going to take a roll call.
Yeah.
So why don't you speak to the bill?
I'm willing to speak to the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it appears to me that the intent of the bill is to create a space for people who are interested in trying to figure out ways to make things a little bit more accessible for people with disabilities to come together and to do that. And that's, it has the stakeholders of the people who are in that area. And so I just think that, that just makes sense, including experts in voting accessibility, election security, an expert in cybersecurity, I mean, as a part of the work group as it stands. So I just, I'm ready and support this as this work group bill just to move forward. That's all.
Anybody else before we do a roll call? Okay. Let's call the roll, Lamoria.
All right, Senator Kagan.
You vote no.
Senator Kagan, no. Senator Augustine? Yes. Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
No.
Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson? Yes. Senator Watson, yes. Senator Attar? Yes. Senator Attar, yes. Senator Brooks? Yes. Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carrozza?
No, and to explain my vote, it's based on security concerns.
Senator Carrozza, no. Senator Hester? Senator Hester abstains. Senator Washington?
No.
Senator Washington, no. Senator Simonaire?
Yes.
Senator Simonaire, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, bill
Senator
carries
Feldman,
6-4 with one abstention. Let's move on to Senate Bill 964.
Senate Bill 964, Dorchester County Well and On-Site Sewage Disposal Activities Privatization Program. This bill authorizes the Maryland Department of the Environment, at the request of the Dorchester County government and the Delegated Approval Authority, which would be their Department of Health, to establish a privatization program for the performance of any activities associated with an MDE delegated authority related to well or septic systems in Dorchester County. The bill establishes related duties for the department and authorizes the department to suspend or halt the privatization program under certain circumstances. The bill also establishes eligibility standards for program participants and related responsibilities for the delegated approval authority. The bill terminates June 30th, 2028. While there are no formal amendments, you will see on the last page of your voting packet, page 82, the Department of the Environment's suggested amendments which clarify and strengthen its oversight of any proposed privatization program. I did reach out to the bill sponsor regarding these amendments. He considers these to be friendly amendments.
Okay, we've got these MDE-friendly amendments. It's been moved by Senator Augustine. Is there a second? Second from Senator Carrozza. All in favor of those MDE-friendly amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? Senate Bill 964 from yes?
Are we doing the amended bill, on the bill?
Yeah, so you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just have a question
Sure.
to council. Does this section of the code, so MD already has this ability, or locals already have the ability to give MDE sort of jurisdiction or looking over their wells. And this is creating just the ability for privatizing that, or?
Right.
I guess I want to, so it's local, but I'm just looking to make sure that it's not, they're not changing any other provisions in the code. So I just want to make sure it's very tight just to this section, and it only has to do with Dorchester County and how they handle it, because they're.
Right, yeah, and so the way generally this works is, in general, the Department of the Environment is the one responsible under the Clean Water Act, under federal law, for handling all this permitting. They are authorized to delegate that to local, typically departments of health, to do this sort of stuff. This would say if specifically Dorchester County asked to essentially further delegate that to some sort of private entity, that they could, it sets up a process where MDE would be able to allow that on this sort of pilot project scale, terminating 2028.
So it's a pilot?
Yeah, I mean, the bill, the entire bill terminates in 2028, so yes, it would be a pilot.
And there's no conflict with, are locals able to, all right, so the federal government delegates the authority to the state of Maryland, and state of Maryland can delegate the authority to a local health department, and that's everywhere. And so I guess federal law is silent on the authority of the state to allow the local to delegate it? To further delegate authority?
That I'm not entirely sure about. I know MDE is in the room. I don't know if anybody could speak to that. I know they're here for a different bill, but
Okay.
nobody raised that as an issue, but that's not to say that it's not, right?
Okay, just, I guess we could vote if we want, that's
Well,
just
if you
to
want
check that out.
You want to do a roll call? We don't have to vote.
No, I'm not
It's a local
voting it.
Dorchester County bill.
Vote it, I just want to raise that maybe someone, as it's moving, just check to make sure that locals are able to delegate a federal obligation without, some other action. That's all.
I will check that before this hits the floor.
Okay,
But
before-
again, it's the department that is ultimately doing the delegating. It would be at the request of the local, but
Okay,
yes.
April will check before we hit the floor if there's any kind of a legal issue, et cetera, et cetera. So with that said, we have the local Dorchester County Senate Delegation Bill 964 in front of us as amended. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously. Let's go back to page 1 real quick. We've got Cook has been patiently waiting for us to take up Senate Bill 234. We've got these two bills, 234 and 250. Let's just see where we are on that. Just April, back again. Why don't you describe the bill again so we know where we're at.
Right. Senate Bill 234, Housing and Community Development Homeless Shelter Certification Program Establishment. This departmental bill requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to operate a homeless shelter certification program and adopt related regulations. Among other requirements, DHCD must develop a tiered certification system, operational standards, and minimum requirements for homeless shelters. The bill also establishes requirements for operators of homeless shelters as well as enforcement provisions. There are amendments in your bill packet. So these begin on pages 11 and 15. You will note that we are working off of draft House amendments, but these are the amendments that have been requested by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So to walk through what these amendments do, we're going to continue on to the reprint, which begins on page 15. The amendments exempt emergency shelters from the bill's requirements. That's on page 16. They also exempt hotel and motel facilities used only as temporary overflow for a facility from the bill's requirements. All right, so we're starting on page 16. And these are a couple of additional exemptions from what is included as a homeless shelter covered by the certification program. So there is an exemption for emergency shelters. And so that would be lines 27, 28. An exemption for hotel and motel facilities used only as temporary overflow for a facility. So that's further down under line 31. There's a definition for operator for purposes of the bill. I will add that the amendments also strike references to owners of homeless shelters throughout to avoid confusion. So the bill is focused on operators under that definition. So these are the entities that control or manage the operations. Moving on to page 18. So these are the standards and minimum requirements provisions. And it adds to that under the section for victims of abuse to clarify that domestic violence may include physical, sexual, verbal, psychological, economic, or technological abuse. And to also apply specifically also to survivors of gender-based violence. So those lines 23 through 26. Moving on to pages 19 through 20, adds requirements regarding reasonable accommodations for disabled individuals and accessibility and translation services for people with limited English language proficiency to the standards and minimum requirements section. So the reasonable accommodations, that's on page 19, line 12. Accessibility and translation services is on page 20, line 2. Pages at the bottom, so pages of the voting packet. So page 20, line 2. So these are all the things that department must adopt regulations and establish operational standards to cover all these things. And one of them would be line 2 of page 20, accessibility and translation services for people with limited English language proficiency.
And whose amendments are these?
These are the Department of Housing and Community Development's amendments.
Let me just say, and Chuck, I know you've been patient here. I have a sense of getting a little, people have a lot of questions, and so I'm just wondering if we put, and actually maybe the MDE bill, maybe these last two bills we put like at the top of the calendar when we vote, maybe as soon as Tuesday. Let's get some questions out here, where we can, but I just don't want to So Senator Hester, yeah, I mean,
You
these are
haven't really
just,
finished going through the amendments yet, have you?
No.
yeah, well, that's why I'm sort of thinking that maybe, okay, so why don't you go through them, and then we may just bump it, but I just get it out there. And maybe we'll do the same thing on MDE, but then let's just, when we come back next time, we'll take these two bills up at the top, but, you know, finish up, April.
All right, so, yep, page 21. So we're now entering the part of the bill dealing with non-discrimination requirements. So this is the section of the bill that says an operator of a homeless shelter may not deny admission or services to any homeless individual because of the individuals, and then lists the protected class. We're on page 21. Adds in line 9, in addition to national origin, it adds citizenship or immigration status.
Can I just ask a question there?
Yeah, well, here, can we just make a note of what you want to ask? Let her finish describing the amendments, then we'll take some questions. And then, as I say, I think my sense is we may have to hold this, but just finish describing the amendments.
Okay. Also explicitly allows family shelters to deny entry to sex offenders and allows rehab facilities to deny entry to individuals who are actively using or otherwise ineligible for treatment. So that's at the bottom of page 21. So after line 21, you'll see that's the language around rehab facilities. And then under line 22, this new subsection E, is the one that specifically says an operator of a homeless shelter that admits children or families with children may deny admission or services to an individual convicted of a sexual offense. It also adds language that provides that certain language in the Maryland Fair Housing Act may not be construed to authorize a homeless shelter to deny admission or services to any individual based on religion or give preference to persons of the same religion. So that's beginning on the bottom of page 21 and continuing on to the top of page 22. Moving on to page 23, line 17. So the bill already authorized the Secretary of Housing and Community Development to allow extensions of the deadline for a homeless shelter to comply with the requirements of the licensing regime. This would also allow, the amendments would also allow them to waive a standard. And then finally on page 24, the amendments add uncodified language clarifying that the department must consider the recommendations of the ongoing study on the establishment of a homeless shelter licensing program when adopting implementing regulations. So phase 1 has already been completed. This would say that they have to consider both phase 1 and phase 2 when adopting implementing regulations.
Okay, guys, so there's a lot there. Let's take a few questions, then I think we're going to hold it. But Senator Watson, yeah.
So,
Okay.
April, by the strict definition of homeless shelter, they use the word primary in there, that excludes churches, right? Places of worship?
No, this does not exclude,
Wait a
would
minute.
not exclude a church-run homeless shelter.
Homeless shelter means a facility that is operated for the primary purpose of providing temporary overnight sleeping accommodations, et cetera. That's not what a church does, even if their primary purpose, we know what a church is. I read that to exclude churches, but you're saying churches are still part of that?
I believe so, and we can call it department, but to
I
the
know.
extent that a church is operating a homeless shelter as opposed to,
It's not its primary purpose. I'm really looking at that word primary that was stuck in there.
So to answer your question, Senator, the intention here, it says not to press, so I didn't.
Tell your name.
I'm sorry, Chuck Cook, Department of Housing and Community Development. The intention of that is to say the primary purpose of the shelter that's being operated. So while the church itself, that may not be the primary purpose of the church, it's the primary purpose of the operations of the shelter.
Okay, let's just go around and let's keep.
Why can't houses of worship be excluded in this bill? I mean, I don't mean to ask you that question. It can, we can do whatever we want to. But I think if we exclude houses of worship, that takes away a bulk of the unfavorables related to this and the challenges.
Okay, well, you put that, again, let's put the issues on the table so we reconvene. Senator Carrozza, and then we'll go to Senator Hester.
Thank you, and I'm going to try to summarize this just because I've spent a lot of time on this. Next to budget and energy, I'm hearing, this is the top issue I'm hearing back home from our small faith-based nonprofit shelters. And from what I understand from reading this, even those shelters that do not accept any state money would be covered under this bill, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Also, as I understand it, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. When you start on page 18, all of these new procedures and protocols are going to be developed that would apply to the homeless shelters. So if you start on page 18 where it says, the department shall establish by regulation a tiered system for homeless shelter certification based on, so if you start to go down, all of this is now going to apply to these shelters. Am I reading that correctly?
No, we shall establish regulations for the tiered system for homeless shelters. But then Section B says that we shall adopt regulations that may include.
Okay, and these would be standards that, right now there's some consistent standards, but this is going to be applied to all shelters regardless of whether they are faith-based and even if they don't accept state money. Is that correct?
So, yes, Senator, there's going to be standards that go across the board. And the tiered levels that we have in mind here with those three different tiers are going to cover everything from permanent shelters that are run with taxpayer dollars all the way to, for instance, pop-up shelters that are run by churches that are less than 7 days, in which case there would be no actual certification needed if it's under that certain limit of time, but there would be the need to let us know that you're running so that in case there needed to be someone who could investigate any kind of claims against the shelter or issues of abuse or anything like that.
So we have this bill, and now we have the new amendments, which we're just seeing tonight. We have, number one, to me, I've taken the position that it's premature to even do this bill since you had not finished a final report that was supposed to lead to these recommendations. So the bill itself, I believe, is premature at this point. If we are, in order for some of these small faith-based nonprofit homeless shelters to even survive, and I'm talking in my district, I've got, Halo in Salisbury. I have the Christian shelter. They have called me over the weekend when I go home on the weekends, asking me and pleading that this legislation as written could shut them down, which is even more reason why I believe the legislation is premature. And going back to my colleague from Prince George's County, basically was inquiring, about an exemption for faith-based shelters, number one, and whether they accept state money or not, or, at least that there be
Senator,
clear.
can I just ask, because we're getting into debating the merits of the bill. Right now, what I'm trying to do is get some questions out because we're not voting on the bill, out on the table. We've gotten a couple issues. I want to go around, and then we're going to hold it. But, okay, I see lights keep going on here. Maybe I'm sorry? No, there's no motion. You know, that's because I could see this was going to take be pretty time consuming, but okay, here. So
So I was just
Sarah
going
Carrozza, get
to,
the
I'll
point.
finish my
Yeah.
point and then I'll move on. But when you have these shelters believing that they're going to shut down based on this is cause for alarm. And, you know, if this were to move forward in any way, they need some protection that nothing in the legislation would infringe upon their religious beliefs or their mission on how they run their shelters. It's one thing to abide by some basic safety and operational standards. It's another one when you get into their actual operations. So with that, again, I would be a no vote moving forward at this time.
Chuck, you're taking notes on all this. So Senator Hester, you're up next, and then Senator Washington, and then Senator Augustine will have the last word, and then we're going to move on.
I mean, I also think the bill is premature, and at a time when we are like looking at, you know, increased homelessness, decreased federal funds. Like, I don't want to put all these nonprofits out of business. I mean, like, we can't let the perfect regulation be the enemy of like a place for a person to sleep when it's really cold. So it's just, I mean, this is just too much at this point in time.
Okay, Senator Washington, questions for Mr. Cook?
As the sponsor of the bill it was 2003, I think it is, to set up, to do a study, I too feel as though the motivation was to establish that we don't have a regime of licensing, we don't have a regime of knowing how many homeless shelters are out there. And the focus was on habitability, some admission standards, you know, and that we were to recommend a plan. And so, you know, Chair, this is the bill is doing a lot more than I think what we are ready to even accommodate at this time. So that's my opinion. I would have enjoyed an opportunity to have spoken with the department prior to
Okay, well,
the bill being put in.
He's here, and
but that didn't
we're not
happen.
voting, and you know, and so there's ample opportunity. You got. Okay, Senator Augustine.
Actual question.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I'm
Question.
confused. Like,
Yeah.
the
Question for
that I
Mr. Cook.
have is yes. Will this? Because I can't tell. Will there be able to be single-sex shelters in this regime? And like, because it says you can't deny someone entry because of sex. Like, how would that work?
So it is open based on the tiered levels that we create. So we have family shelters, and then you have adult shelters as well. But yes, absolutely, if they are deemed that specific type of shelter, absolutely. And that's going to be clearly in regulations. I'm happy to send you the report as well on how we're planning on laying that all out.
Okay, but it's not written in what we're trying to present right now statutory language-wise. Because I'm not seeing it in the statutory language that we're being asked to do. And we don't have to answer this now since we're not doing this now, but I'm just saying, like, I don't see that in the, we can come back to it.
So Chuck, I mean, just again, it's good to get some issues out here that are on people's minds. So thank you, Chuck, for your assistance here. Okay, the final thing we're going to do today, April's just going to walk through on 250, the other bill on here, just what the amendments on the table are. And I think we'll just stop after that. But I want her to just explain. There's some amendments from MDE, and then there are amendments from Senator Washington. I just think it'd be good to get it out there, and then we're going to break at that point. So April, on Senate Bill 250, just describe for the committee the amendments.
All right, so Senate Bill 250, as a reminder, this is Department of the Environment, fees, penalties, funding, and regulations, alters fees under a number of programs, and then also establishes a new framework for governing dams and establishes a related special fund. The amendments from the Department of the Environment, and this is when I sent them the reprints around to your offices. The amendments from MDE are in your bill packet, but it's easier to look at the reprint. Send it by email because it's so lengthy. But essentially, what the MDE amendments do is just strike various changes that they no longer want to cover under this bill. They're having discussions around those changes through the BRFA process. So specifically, the amendment strikes changes related to fees under the Erosion and Sediment Control Responsible Personnel Training Program, the Wetlands and Waterways Program, the Lead Rental Registry, the Voluntary Cleanup Program, and the Maryland Mining Program for non-coal surface mining. In addition, I sent around amendments that have been offered by Senator Washington. These amendments also preserve those provisions that have been struck by the bill from MDE. But in addition, they strike the proposed provision requiring money deposited to the Clean Air Fund to remain in the Clean Air Fund. So right now, once that fund reaches, I think, $2 million, the overage reverts to the general fund. Departmental bill would keep that in the fund. Senator Washington's amendments would strike that change so it goes back to the general fund. Reduces the maximum emissions-based air quality operating permit fee proposed under the bill. The bill raises it from the maximum from $50 to $200 per ton of pollution. Senator Washington's amendments would bring down that maximum to $100 per ton. Strikes language authorizing the department to charge a fee for processing and issuing on-site sewage disposal permits and individual well construction permits in a county where MDE assumes the authority for those activities. Requires existing annual environmental enforcement reports. So this is an existing reporting requirement. Right now, those reports go to the Legislative Policy Committee. Her amendments would have those reports submitted to this committee and the Environment and Transportation Committee. Restores language requiring an applicant to provide evidence to the Department of the Environment that they have implemented state and federal plans and regulations to control pollution as a condition precedent to the issuance or renewal of an oil transfer license. Defines the term dam and private dam. For purposes of section 5-203.1, those terms don't actually appear there. I believe probably it was meant to be with the next section that deals with the new dam safety permit. Moves the dam safety permit section and strikes language concerning the basis of the fees. Requires the fees to be set in regulation by September 1st, 2026, and prohibits the department from subsequently modifying the fees without legislative enactment. Restores all the current language and provisions regarding the inspection of water infrastructure assets. And then finally, adds uncodified language requiring the department to adopt regulations to establish the permit application process and the collection and fee structure for dam safety permits on or before September 1st, 2026.
Okay, so there's a lot there. You've got a reprint that has MDE amendments. You've got a separate group of amendments from Senator Washington. And so you've got some homework to review all that. And I think with that, I think we've done enough for today. So I am going to suggest that we adjourn. And I'm hopeful that we will have a quorum at 9 a.m. tomorrow and we will be efficient. And I hereby declare this meeting adjourned.